All right, I think we're rolling.
It's flashing.
Okay, excited to talk to you, John. This is the day after the retrial for Joe Exotic. We were both there in Oklahoma. And what were your initial thoughts?
It's pretty much turned out the way I thought it would be. I went there with pretty much convinced that nothing was going to change. He did get 1 year off his sentence, but the judge was still pretty adamant about his attitude towards Joe, so he gave him 21 years versus 22 years, so there wasn't much change, but I kind of expected that. So
yeah, but you didn't expect it to be that small of a reduction, right?
No, I really expected a little bit more off the time, but it is what it is. Whether it's 1 month or whether it's 10 years, he's still there for a long time over something that he didn't do. So I don't know. We'll go from there.
So the judge actually talked about a range, and the sentencing still ended up on the higher end of the range.
It did.
What was it, like 210?
Yeah. It was from
the low?
It was 210 to 2. The low was 210 and the high was 252, to where the other one was 210 to 262. So he still took the top of the range.
Yeah. Which is, he could have shown some sort of leniency.
Something, but no.
To get it down to 15 years, which was within the range.
Judge is an ass, and he showed himself there. He just...
Yeah. But this judge tried to act like he was very fair and impartial, and that's the part that kind of bothered me, especially with some of those statements that he made last time around lecturing Joe. So what are your kind of thoughts on that? And did he have a change of heart? Obviously, the verdict didn't, the sentencing...
Didn't reflect it.
Yeah.
He, the last time he sentenced Joe, he was pretty hard. He ripped Joe's ass about everything. And this time he put it in a perspective that it wasn't so harsh, but yet the harshness was still there. He just put it in words that made it sound a little bit smoother, softer, and his intentions were still all direct and nothing smooth about it. So
the scope of the trial was something that was mentioned heavily, and he didn't want to have any discussion on the actual new evidence that came out. So what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was really surprised. They did bring it up. John Phillips introduced all the new evidence that he's gotten, and he brought it up, but he brought it up to the point where he says, I can't talk about it because that's not what we're here for today. Today was just about resentencing to finish up the guilty case from before. But he knows about it. He knows all the charges. He knows everybody that perjured themselves, but yet he overlooked it and went ahead and sentenced him to the max.
And do you think that there's an element of face-saving here? This is a guy that did administer the first sentence, and I think it would be difficult for him to backtrack and say, oh, I initially was wrong. So do you think there's an element of face-saving?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's no judge in the world going to admit that they screwed up. I can assure you that. So when he laid it down, he laid it all down, and he went straight for the max again. So
yeah, fascinating. Now, what did you think of Molly's performance? There was a female lawyer that came in and made really most of the strongest part of the case for the defendant.
Yeah. When John Phillips come to Oklahoma City, they had to have somebody from Oklahoma City to help to represent John Phillips' firm. And they got this lady her name's Molly, and I called her a pit bull because she stood firm. She attacked, didn't hold back, had no remorse, man. She just dove right in that judge, and he accepted it. He knew that she put the prosecution in their place on a couple deals, so she did a great job. You couldn't ask for a better one.
So let's talk about some of the elements of how she went after them. she certainly was talking about a little bit of the government's misconduct throughout this whole evidence gathering and prosecution of Joe Exotic. What are your thoughts on some of those arguments against the government's conduct through all this?
It's she made it a point to bring it up so everybody in there knew about all the misconduct that the government's done. John Phillips and his team have dug and dug and dug, and they've uncovered a lot of stuff about Matt Bryant with the Federal Fish and Wildlife, Amanda Green. She was prosecution then, now she's a judge.
How is that okay?
They brought it up, and everybody's aware of it now, but the judge didn't want to hear it. He let her speak her mind, and she made it a point to bring it all up to make sure everybody knew about it. So it's documented now in the court records. He's aware of it. He knows it. He has nothing to do but address it the next time.
And, one of the biggest issues I had was the fact that it's the same judge again, but I guess that they have to, because it's on the same level of, prosecution, but in the future for the appeals process, they're going to have a different judge. Is that right?
I hope. I've asked John Phillips, but he hasn't answered me yet. Everything Joe has went to court over with Carole has been this judge. Every time. The bankruptcy, the lawsuit, the judgment that Carole got against him, all of this has been this judge. And it always goes in front of him, and they won't give him a different judge. And we know there's bias here. That judge hates Joe and has from day one. And it shows. I mean...
Yeah. And how is that okay?
It's not okay. I mean, it's definitely not okay. But they say the laws state that the same judge has to hear the case, the sentencing, the resentencing. It all has to be the same court, the same judge. But my question to John Phillips is can we get a new judge? This needs to be heard in front of a different judge in order to get the evidence out there.
Because I believe that everything is on a very shaky foundation here from the get-go.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's a lot of issues that even in previous cases they didn't discuss, like animal best practices, which we discussed in our last interview. Do you believe that those issues we discussed, such as, animal best practices, declawing, all of those things, do you think that will come up in future... and during the appeals process?
I don't think so. I don't think it'll come up in the appeal. I think, I don't know. I hope a lot of that stuff comes up in it, but I don't think it will. I think they're going to try and keep it focused on what the evidence at hand.
Yeah.
But, I just went through another 2.5 hour interview with the FBI.
Okay.
And they drilled me. They drilled me about every statement I made, every statement that I said in my deposition, and they questioned it. And then by the time I was done with that 2.5 hour interview, I was convinced I was just a dumbass. I made all that stuff up. I mean, they just worked their way to convince you that, well, you said it like this, but you might have meant it like this. I mean, they kept playing on words every time they opened their mouths. And... I don't know, they're intimidating. They convince you that you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
So what was the point of that interview, John? And you said this was recent. Was it in preparation for this trial that we were at yesterday?
No, it's not. It's actually in preparation for the next trial that's going to happen, because John Phillips is bringing up all the evidence about the misconduct with Matt Bryant, Amanda Green,
Oh, wow.
The FBI agents that Garrettson and Lowe all cohorted with to make all this happen. And it was about that. It was about the perjury stuff. But it was more of a, let's make Reinke look stupid is what I got out of it, because, I mean, they tore it apart. They tore every question I was asked and I answered. They tore it apart in that deposition, from that deposition, because I went to Florida and did a deposition for Joe for the new trial that they're going to work on now. And they tore it apart. I mean, word for word. We talked about it.
Interesting.
And, I mean, it makes you feel, they convinced me that I didn't know what I was talking about.
And you were the guy that operated the zoo day after day after day.
Yep.
And made sure those animals were healthy, and that for about 14 years, right?
Yep.
So, what were the types of questions that they asked, and what was the gaslighting that they were trying to do on some of the facts?
It wasn't. It sure wasn't about the animals and everyday running of the zoo. It was definitely about my deposition that I give John Phillips about being there. About, well, for instance, one was, how do I know Joe didn't give Alan Glover that check and say, here, go kill Carole? Because I wasn't there. They said, you were not there when Joe handed him the check, were you? And I said, no, I was not. So then how do you know Joe didn't tell him to go kill Carole? I said, well, I guess I didn't. But I said, we had talked about this before, and it was to get Alan Glover off the property, not go kill Carole. And they just convince you to look at it differently. I mean, it's just weird how they, it's almost like being in that room with that one light shining on you, and they're just drilling you with questions, and that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Nothing personal about it at all. It was all just to dig into me to see exactly what I meant.
So it was a fishing expedition of sorts to cover their tracks.
Yes.
Because there was a lot here going on that even Alan Glover, who was sadly unable to join us yesterday, was trying to say was this was not the intent. This was, we had lied.
Yeah.
Apparently, he and Jeff Lowe had lied, and they're going back and changing their story. And I think probably the FBI wanted to cover what it did.
It's crazy how, growing up in Laugh, you didn't perjure yourself in court. That's for damn sure. It was a no-no. And it was known to be a no-no. But during this whole case right here, you got Garrettson, Lowe, Glover, Eric Cowie. They all perjured themselves on that stand because Jeff Lowe told them what to say. Mm-hmm. And they did it without blinking an eye. They didn't care. They didn't care what the repercussions were. They just did it.
They were afraid. Jeff probably hung this, if you don't follow my orders, you're going to be in deeper...
Yeah. When all this took place, Jeff Lowe tried to convince me that I was going to jail, that he had stuff on me to put me in jail for a long time, and I stuck to my guns. I'm the only one that stuck to my guns. He scared John Finley. John Finley told whatever Jeff Lowe wanted him to say, he said, because Jeff Lowe had Finley scared to death he was going to jail. Finley didn't know anything. John Finley didn't know biscuits about that park and how it ran and what took place day to day. He didn't have a clue. He was just Joe's boy toy. But Jeff Lowe knew it, and he knew he had to make everybody look bad.
Right.
And that's what they did at all costs. But I didn't fall for it. I said that, I'm not falling for it. You don't have nothing on me to put me in jail. I'm not going to jail. So I just stuck to my guns and pissed him off.
And the truth is now coming out, obviously. So I think we all would want to see justice served, and that's Jeff and Lauren put behind bars, rightfully where they belong, and not Joe.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe served enough time. I think you and everyone can agree Joe did do some bad things, but at the end of the day,
not 22 years.
21 years. Now, yes.
But no, he definitely doesn't deserve that.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is now. You got Jeff Lowe in Mexico, so he's not coming back to the United States.
Yeah.
I bet he don't ever come back to the United States.
It's probably where it's headed, which is crazy. But let's transition to Joe. Obviously, no matter how you feel about Joe, yesterday, anyone with any heart or any empathy can see a man that came out looking emaciated, thin, weak. What were your thoughts when you first saw your old boss?
Yeah, pretty skinny. Not aging well at all. You can tell it's actually really taking a big toll on his life. Now with prostate cancer, not getting the treatments that he needs in prison. I've always had the misconception that prisons took care of you, but I guess they don't. He's not getting his infusions that he's supposed to have or nothing, and and it's definitely taking its toll on him. You can see it. Pretty frail. He can't weigh 120 pounds.
It's sad. Now, there was a moment there during intermission when the judge went back to his chambers to reassess what the sentencing would be. And Joe was able to just hang out in a small little area, but was able to see a bunch of fans sitting there with Joe Exotic shirts and, you know, old friends like yourself and some other people that came to support him. How do you what was his reaction to all of that?
Yeah, you could see him. He seen me and Doug turning over there, and his eyes lit up. And then there's a bunch of fans with Free Joe Exotic shirts on and stuff like that. And he knew all them. So, yeah, he was pretty pleased to see the turnout that he had as far as the following goes. So he'd raise his eyebrows or smirk at us or something. So we knew he acknowledged us.
Yeah. He did a lot of winking, too.
Yeah,
I talked to some people after the...
he winked at all of them.
Yeah, so that was really nice. I got a wink, too, so that was really, really great. So hopefully that gives him the boost. I mean, it's amazing to hear that he was going back to prison. He was put in a U.S. Marshal plane. Tell us a little bit about what you heard.
Yeah, we didn't know if they busted him down there or if they flew him down there or how he got down here. But they said the U.S. Marshals have a private plane that they use to fly prisoners around with, and that's what they flew him out of North Carolina with. So he left the courtroom, and John Phillips said that they whisked him away right away to put him back on the plane to get him back to North Carolina. So said they didn't hesitate, waste any time at all. They just left.
And we hope that seeing us and seeing that he has support out there gives him a boost to continue fighting, even just staying alive and waiting for all this evidence from John Phillips and all that they're compiling for the next part of this trial. Are you optimistic?
No, I think it's going to take about a year to make this happen, though. I think it's going to be a while. So it's one of them things that it is what it is, but it'll happen, I guess. It's just going to take time. Right.
And how do you feel about even this trial that we went through yesterday taking about 6 months or more to happen?
That's the crazy part, because they knew this resentencing had to happen, and they kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. It literally took 7 months to have this trial for a resentencing that they knew had to happen. So I can just imagine a new trial. It may take longer than a year. I might be optimistic thinking it's only going to take a year, so it may take longer.
Right.
But I know John Phillips is ready for it, so.
That's good. And now I wanted to transition before we move away from the Joe topic, the media yesterday, I followed some of the immediate news reports right after, and one of them claimed that Joe's declining health was also coupled with his declining popularity, and the fact that there was a GoFundMe account that was supposed to help pay for these legal fees that only raised $15,000 of a $500,000 goal, and then they lowered it to $100,000 as evidence that his popularity is declining. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I know they had a GoFundMe set up to pay the fine. Carole had a fine against Joe, and that's what it was meant to pay. But, Tiger King's 2 or 3 years old now. I mean, it can't stay popular forever. I mean, I can understand that. So, it's to be expected to start declining off. I mean, all we can do is go to court and keep it in the news. That's all we can do to give him a fair trial. So, I don't know. It's kind of be expected. I look for it to just fade off and go away.
Yeah. And that is actually what Joe said also during the trial when he had made his statements. Can you speak a little bit to what he said, and also what he had said something very powerful. There were a few things. One of them was that his parents had died during this whole process, but also that he wishes he never had this fame or whatever.
Yeah,
yeah.
Joe's always been Joe, and he's always been in the limelight. He wants to be up front and center all the time. But he made the comment about he wishes this would have never happened and Tiger King would have never happened. And, of course, because he wouldn't be in jail if none of this happened. But it is what it is. he is. If he was to get out of jail tomorrow, he could set his price on what he could charge to be on the Tonight shows, because every one of them would want to talk to him because they knew it took place. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal, and everybody can say what they want. The pandemic, it was a huge deal during the pandemic. I mean, everybody watched it during the pandemic, so it made it big. It is what it is, but we'll see. I don't know. He can get up there and he can say all he wants about he lost his parents. You know, he lost his entire family because his niece crapped on him. His brother crapped on him, but they've always crapped on him all their lives. As long as I've been around, they've always crapped on him. So that's nothing new. But he did lose his mom and dad. Lost his husband, who sold all of his underwear, socks, everything. I mean, if somebody could crap on Joe, they did, and it was his family.
The people closest to him.
Yeah,
so sad. Now let's turn this conversation over to another person that was there in the room, Carole Baskin. Apparently, they had stayed in Oklahoma City overnight, and was there early for the trial and was there. Her and her husband Howard. Tell us a little bit about your impressions when you saw them.
When they walked in the courtroom, I didn't know that they were going to be there, but when they did walk in the courtroom, I mean, the entire courtroom, the demeanor changed. My blood started boiling, but that's to be expected. But, she looks frail. Howard looks worse. I mean, Howard's got a cane, can barely walk. His arthritis has taken over his life. I don't know. They sat in the back. It's like the courtroom give in to them. I mean, it's like they were catering to them alone.
Yeah, they even got a whole row.
They took a whole row and emptied everybody out of it and said, you can't sit there, just for Carole and them. And then Carole and them elected not to sit there. I don't know what makes her so special other than her poor, pitiful me attitude, thinking that everybody's out to get her. I don't know. It just put a different demeanor in the courtroom when they walked in. So.
Yeah. And one of the fascinating points during that trial was Molly first of all, on the prosecution side, they had mentioned that, in her testimony, she mentioned fear for what Joe or his mob would do. Yeah. But that was pushed back on by Molly when the lawyer Molly had said that Carole very publicly said that if Joe were to support the Big Cat Safety Act, that she would gladly even support the pardon.
Yeah, and get him out early. Yeah.
So she couldn't have been that scared to make that offer, right? Yep. So speak a little to that.
That was a pretty good little statement from Molly. So I remember Carole saying that. I remember her putting it out publicly that if Joe would help her push the Big Cat Safety Act, she'd help Joe get out of jail. That's how threatened she feels of her life. But, it's just Carole looking for press, looking for publicity, any kind of limelight that she can get. She had no intentions of helping Joe, I assure you. Joe could cave and push and pass the damn Big Cat Safety Act, and Carole would not be there to help him, I assure you. But that's not going to happen. The Big Cat Safety Act's a bad deal. People are starting to see it a little more and more every day.
Tell us a little more about what you're seeing, that people are waking up to this, this scam of the Big Cat Safety Act.
Yeah, the Big Cat Safety Act, they're coming, anybody with an animal. It's not necessarily, it's called the Big Cat Safety Act, but it's not just about big cats. They're coming after anybody and everybody with animals. It doesn't matter if you got goats, chickens, dogs, horses, or cows. They're coming after you. And it's happening every day right now. They just took 2 more down. They're attacking 2 more this week. It seems like every day they're attacking somebody else.
Okay, and who are those 2 being attacked?
The Columbus Zoo. They're hammering the Columbus Zoo right now because they don't have an AZA accreditation, and you have to have an AZA accreditation to be in the state of Ohio. They just attacked 2 more places in Ohio. And they're bringing up stuff that happened 15, 20 years ago and not what's happening today. They may have a perfect record today in the past 2 or 3 years, but 10 years ago they got rolled up, and that's what they're bringing up, and they're attacking them for it. You got the ALDF, which is the American League Animal League Defense Fund, and PETA. and they're forcing the USDA to investigate anybody that had a write-up 10 years ago, 5 years ago, in the past. There's no, okay, you messed up 10 years ago, let's make it right this year. They don't care about that. They want you to be taken down on something that happened 10 years ago, and it's happening every day. They're going after every zoo, every animal park, every facility with animals. It's happening, and if you think it's not going to happen to you, you're wrong, because they're coming.
So specifically in Ohio, why is it that state that they're targeting? And then also, what can we do on the legislative front? I mean, can Ohio residents write to their legislators and say that you need some sort of statute of limitations, that you can't be trying stuff that's like 15 years in the past? I mean, is there something that we can do as a public, especially in our community, for responsible animal and exotic animal ownership? Can we help these zoos? I mean, tell us what we can do practically.
I'm going to say Ohio's a lost cause, because Ohio set precedents when Terry Thompson's animals got turned loose. Ohio came in and didn't give any choices. They made laws, and they passed laws, and they built a stainless steel facility to hold every animal they confiscated. Ohio has messed up bad precedence-wise. They made the laws, they made the rules. It is what it is. So now one of the biggest zoos in the United States lost their accreditation that you have to have animals in Ohio. So it's all in the fate of the Columbus Zoo right now to see what happens. They didn't pass their appeal. The appeal got denied. So everybody's in limbo right now, just waiting to see what happens with the Columbus Zoo. All this takes place after Jack Hanna, I think, got diagnosed with dementia. I think is what he got diagnosed with. And Jack Hanna is one of the biggest sponsors of the Columbus Zoo. He's the forefront guy. But, you can't own a rat. You can't own an iguana in Ohio. I think Ohio is written in stone. I don't think you're going to stop anything. You can call your congressman. You can write your representatives. But I don't think it's going to matter, because it's already done. And I just noticed that publicly they started taking down more and more zoos in Ohio. Roadside facilities, zoos, farms, stuff like that. But it's not just Ohio. It's everywhere. They're taking them down everywhere. They're attacking them here in Texas for something, like I said, the Franklin, Texas, they're attacking him for something that happened 10 years ago. It's crazy how they just dig stuff up out of the past and just harp on it and make it sound like it's happening right away to get the animal rights people involved to start taking everybody down. I'm telling you, people, if you don't think it's going to happen to you, you're wrong. It's coming.
So is the way to fight this litigation, and do we have good lawyers that are representing the side of responsible private ownership that's starting to be put under attack?
There's a group out there called the Cavalry Group, and they are probably the strongest and the best to defend all this. It's just, it takes money to do this, and people got to stick together. They got to get together and band together and put their money together to fight this as one, not as individuals. You don't have enough money individually to do that. You can't. There's no way. PETA has a lot of money, and I'm talking billions to fight this, and that's how they're winning. He with the most money wins, and that's the way it is. So if these animal people don't get together and work together, Cavalry Group, support the Cavalry Group, people. Call your representatives. Call your congressmen.
Do you know the website at all?
I don't know Cavalry's website, but I know it's called the Cavalry Group.
Cavalry. Okay.
Yep.
C-A-L-V-A-R-Y.
Yeah.
V-A-R-Y.
And
okay.
And they have been there for a long time to help fight this stuff right here, legislation and stuff.
Yeah. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? Because certain states have pushed back, and still, I think states like Alabama, for example, are pretty open with private ownership and allowing people to have exotic animals.
Yeah, we still got Texas and Oklahoma. It's getting harder in Oklahoma with all this Tiger King stuff going on, but yeah, there's some southern states that are still holding true to their animal worlds.
Mm-hmm.
But
and Mountain West, right?
It's getting harder and harder, man. I mean, out west. It's getting where you can't even watch a rodeo anymore.
Yes.
I mean, there is actually cities in Colorado that can't have rodeos because of animal rights people. It's bad. It's bad.
But there's still a demand for that, for rodeos and for circuses and all of that, right? So a lot of small indies are surviving. So I'm guessing, John, that you think we should be supporting these smaller independent operations, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, definitely. If you get a chance to see a circus that's got animal acts in it, you need to go see it because they're limited, I promise you. Every day there's more and more towns that won't allow it, so it's getting harder and harder to see. Rodeos, Houston, we have one of the biggest rodeos out there, and it's getting harder and harder to see them. So if you get a chance to see these in person, you need to go do it because they're coming to an end, and it's bad to say, but it's happening.
So recently in my town, we had a circus come to town, and they told me, and I asked them, do you have animals? They said, oh, no, it's actually, there's no demand for that anymore. Can you kind of tell me your thoughts on that? Because I certainly know I grew up watching animals in circuses, and that was the norm for me. Are they trying to gaslight, or are these circuses that are saying there is no demand, are they just full of it?
They're full of it. There is a demand for it, but they're trying to play it off like there isn't a demand. Because, just because I deal with animals, I know every day you got to worry about animal rights people knocking on your door or talking to your neighbors or videoing your facility. That's the tactics that they do. Mm-hmm. And they have convinced cities to not have animal acts in their circuses. Well, to me, growing up, you went to a circus to see elephants and tigers and horses and dogs, and that's why you went. To me, a circus isn't a circus without an animal act. And they should all be allowed to do what they want to do.
Yeah, I refused to go see it because I thought they were gaslighting me. Yeah. They're telling me one thing, but my reality says another. And I think that's what's happening with the media as well. Now, I want to kind of wrap this up with, it's been, 3-4 months now since Tiger King 2 and the Doc Antle spinoff has been released. I know last time you and I sat down and talked about that when it first came out. What has been your observation on the media coverage and the people's response to those two seasons that were just released concurrently around November of last year, now that the dust has settled?
It's pretty much, season 2 come out. It was a little more informative about laws and stuff that's going on. It wasn't such a nutshell. And then they come out with the Doc Antle story, but it's all been kind of hushed and kind of blowed off. Not near the hype as it was, probably because it wasn't a shit show, I guess. Mm-hmm. But Doc Antle's got money; he can keep it quiet, and his story got real quiet. But he's still prevailing. He's still got his business open for business, and he's hanging in there. And it's going to take him to stay together. They're going to try. They're going to try their best to shut him down, but I think Doc can prevail. I mean, he has a really nice facility. I've been there. Everybody knew he had a different lifestyle. I mean, it's no big surprise. But I'm kind of surprised how quiet it was, and how low keyed it came out versus the first one. Little different persona, I guess I should say.
And, obviously the first one came out in an environment full of boredom. Yeah. Everyone was stuck at home for pandemic, and, that was the most exciting thing that came along. And now things are opening up, especially in Texas and lots of other states. Florida, everyone's out and about. Now, what do you think that people should watch season 2 and 3 for? Because, what I found very fascinating is after that came out, we had a lot of critics come out and say, oh, it was boring, this and that, it can't capture the fire. I actually like season 2 better than I like season 1. I thought that season 2 really taught me a lot about what was going on as far as the government overreach. I don't think it was slanted too much and telling you what to think. I have a different opinion about Doc Antle's story. I thought that was a hit piece, but more season 2 was very informative, and certainly for me, it gave me a lot of sympathy to people like, obviously Joe, because of the new findings on his, Alan and Jeff retracting their stories, but also what happened to Tim Stark and the blatant overstepping of the government into his private ownership. So I like season 2 for that aspect, but what do you hope that people watch out of season 2?
The biggest thing is exactly that. Season 2 told more about what was taking place and how much crookedness there was as far as the government goes. Alan Glover, Jeff Lowe, but everybody knew Jeff Lowe was sleazy, and you could just see it written like a book. But the truth come out about that in season 2, so it kind of shocked everybody. But yeah, it wasn't the nutshell that season 1 was, so everybody thought it was boring. But those that thought it was boring were there for the shock and awe of it, to where you didn't have that in season 2. It was more of this is what took place, this is how it took place. And then, you got the Doc Antle story. It was a hit piece. I mean, they just headhunting Doc Antle now, so they made that point very, very clear. And it's a different opinion about Doc Antle, but to me, you can't wait 30 years to say something about something that took place. You should have said something 30 years ago, not today.
Exactly.
So.
And it's the same thing that they're trying to do with these other private zoos, is to find violations from 2007 and try to litigate it today. Right? Yeah. So, but let's talk about happy things now. You got lots of exciting projects, including, you're going to be going out to Hollywood for a movie that you're going to be part of, right?
Yeah, I think I may just venture out that way for a day and see what happens. A couple offers has come in, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know. I'm not one to be in the limelight, so we'll see how it goes.
What do you think of the Joe versus Carole? Obviously, it is going to be an enactment, not of the actual reality stars, but of some actors. And I think someone is playing you in that. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this upcoming series.
Yeah, Peacock's coming out with Joe versus Carole on March 3rd, I think, and I've seen the trailer. Not tickled. I'm not pleased about it. I've not been asked to use my portrayal or any of that, and they're going to try and use it. It's you hate to give them the clicks, but I got to watch it to see if it's actually portraying me the way it needs to be done. I don't know. I'm not happy with it. I am going to look for an attorney to see if I can't stop it, but we'll see. I don't know. Just from what I've gathered and what I've seen them in the filming part of it, it's nothing like Tiger King. Nothing.
And do you think there's going to be some future Tiger King seasons, or where do you think that's going?
I think Tiger King's pretty much done. I think it's over. I don't see any more future episodes. I don't know what else they could talk about other than who they're going to take down next. And that's possible because Carole's after more people. Good industries, they're after more people. So, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But I really think Tiger King's over.
Yeah, what's fascinating too is that operation is in full force. As you guys know, my last interview with John, I got canceled. Apparently, the mob came and when one of my old publications featured my interview, they all came and canceled, and my editor went from saying it was a great interview and she loved it to you're getting terminated. So. What are your thoughts on that and this whole, operation they still have? I mean, it's pretty amazing how quickly they can mobilize Tim, and including Tim Stark putting up the video with a monkey. It took 5 minutes of it being up to get then transferred over to one of their groups that got the mob to be shocked and in awe over a monkey.
Yeah, definitely. They want to prove their point and make it make it look as bad as they can make it look. I thought our article was an excellent article. Several places picked it up, ran with it. Everybody said I did a good job. And the next thing I know, you're getting fired from it. Absolutely crazy, but it just shows how political everything is nowadays.
Yeah, it has become that. And who suffers the most when it's like that, and you don't allow different opinions, and you don't? Because I'm very happy to sit down and talk with people who don't agree with me, but I guess these days they will cancel you if you don't agree with them. Yeah. And I think that's a sad place to be.
Yeah, it's crazy.
By the way, can I get the whole bill?
No, here, I'll get it.
No, I got it.
But yeah, it's a shame that it has to be that political and that one-sided. But that's where they try and force you to be. It's their way or no way. Yeah. That's pretty much what they say.
Exactly. And who suffers in the end? It's the animals. So, when I hear John or Tim losing their animals, that just breaks my heart. And I hope that things can change in that way. So,
yeah. We'll see you guys next time. Okay.
Thank you.
I got it. So. All right. Well, any last words, John? And obviously you got your Hollywood stuff, but there's other projects I'm sure you're working on. Tell the audience about what's going on in your world. So
yeah, I've made some pretty good friends in this Tiger King saga crap. I've met up some amazing people: Josh from Moonshiners, Ron and Amy from Lizard Lick, John Schneider, Hazards. I've met some really great people, and I've gotten to work with some of them. So hopefully we can do some stuff together, and look for me out there. I'll be out there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks for your thoughts, John, especially on the trial.
No problem.